Rob Gillis, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. You are engaged with the sheriff's associations, with a lot of different police departments and sheriff's offices running specific bills for law enforcement this year. Now, there are some bills like license plate readers. I did an episode with Mike Moralia about that just yesterday. There are other bills about parole officers and search warrants and things like that for individuals. You're dealing with two bills that we're talking about today. One is attempted murder charges for somebody who kills a police officer, and the other is capital punishment for child molesters. Neither of these things are super fun topics to talk about, but there are holes, at least it seems, in our legislation that you guys are working to kind of fill. So let's start with the attempted murder for law enforcement.
Okay. Basically, I'm from prior law enforcement, so when I retired up here, I had unfortunately experienced multiple deaths of friends during my career, and it really impacted me. I came up here, I was only up here for a short period of time, about a week, and a Ada County deputy was shot at termination of a pursuit up by a floating feather. And shortly thereafter, one of my buddies who had lateraled up here was shot at the termination of a pursuit. He didn't get hit. And then in April of 23, a really good family friend who also transferred up here was stabbed up on the I-84 out past the airport. Todd Nelson, that was all over the news out here. He almost died. And then we know about last year with Tobin Bolter being shot and killed on a traffic stop. So with my prior experience and with what's been going on and the trend that's increased, law enforcement shootings have gone up about 120% over the last 5 years in just this Treasure Valley area. I pulled up the laws on murder and attempt murder of a peace officer, and I saw some things in it. The laws were made many, many years ago. The amendments were made many years ago. There is a life component. There is a death penalty component for killing a peace officer. However, if the prosecuting attorney, for whatever reason, doesn't have the criteria that they want to seek a death penalty and say a second-degree murder is option on the table, the sentencing guidelines started at 10 years. And I had a hard time with that. To see that potentially, I mean, they're going to use special allegations with the use of a firearm, gang members, things like that. But to have the sentencing threshold start at 10 years for a second-degree murder, I was like, there's no way, so let's fix it.
And again, I please excuse my ignorance. When you're talking about like second-degree murder versus first-degree murder, it's like first-degree would be, okay, you set out intentionally, premeditated to go out, find this police officer, and kill the police officer. Second-degree is you're, doing whatever you're doing. You get in an interaction with the police officer just by accident, and you end up killing him.
It could be, yeah. Right. I mean, if there's no aggravating factors specific, like involved in another crime and killing a peace officer, the prosecuting attorneys can charge however they're going to charge, and we have good ones. We have great ones. But the other issue with the bill was that when I started reading it, everything in the bill referred to a male peace officer. There was nothing in the current law in Idaho that referred to a female. Everything was him, his, or himself. And there was a trooper that was killed up north in 98. Her name was Linda Huff. She was shot and killed, ambushed outside of a station. And I started looking, I'm like, well, we don't even refer to female peace officers in this law. Why don't we change this? And then you get into attempted murder of a peace officer. That's not what it's called here. It's assault with intent. It's semantics, but attempted murder of a peace officer sounds much more, carries weight for a lot of peace officers. I met with the chiefs recently out here, and they agreed that they don't understand why it's been the way it's been for so long. I added in specific criteria within the bill so that, there's a pushback often in the state about law enforcement and overreach and things like that. So I made sure to put in the bill that the peace officer has to be acting lawfully within the confines of the law. It can't be some cop that's just off on a willy-nilly violation of somebody's rights. People are big on property rights here.
Sure.
So I wanted to make sure to protect the citizens also, because there's always going to be a question or concern. Do they just get a blanket? They can do whatever they want? No, they can't. They got to follow the law too. So I did put a provision in for that. I put in a provision for organized crime, cartels, gangs, prison gangs ordering hits on officers, and being able to be charged also under this section.
And so if there's an attempted murder of a police officer, what happens then as a revision?
So a peace officer need not be wounded. So if somebody shoots at police car or a police officer or a sheriff's deputy 5 times, whatever, doesn't hit them, it can still fall into the criteria. You shoot at somebody 5, 10 times, you're trying to kill them.
Right.
You shoot into a patrol car, you're trying to kill them.
Right.
It needed some specified, articulated language to make that be possible. The way the current law reads to what it's going to read are 2 totally different things.
And is this an enhanced sentencing kind of thing, or is it just a revision to catch more, to give prosecutors more like firepower, essentially?
It's to specify and clearly define so there won't be questions. It covers off-duty officers that that identify themselves. And it's something that to just try to streamline it. It's too convoluted right now. And I think that a lot of people that are looking at it, chiefs and sheriffs around the state, are seeing it and saying, yeah, this kind of does make sense. Now, again, they can charge special allegations of firearm use or shooting from a car or gang member stuff, but why not start at the threshold higher? It's not a mandatory minimum, but it reaches, instead of 10 years, it's 25 or 35, and then that's where the prosecutor can start at. If somebody wants to plead out for less, that's up to them, but their threshold starts much higher.
So the first revision is going from murder in the second degree to murder in the first degree, right? And you get an engagement with a law enforcement officer, you kill that person. It may not have been premeditated, but you'll be charged as if it's premeditated. And then the second revision is intent to kill an officer as defined by all of these different things with a higher threshold than it was before.
The sentencing guidelines will be higher, yes. And then at the same time, the current law in our state for attempted murder of a normal person, a regular, average, everyday citizen, the law reads the sentencing threshold is not less than 1 year, not more than 14 years in the current law. And I have a hard time with that too. It's like you try to kill somebody, a regular citizen, and they're facing 14 years max. I think it sends the wrong message. Crime is going up. There's areas of our state where they say it's down. There's other areas that it's clearly going up. Acts of violence are occurring in neighboring cities. There was a murder a few days ago in Canyon County area of Caldwell. Things are happening, and I think that we need to adapt. Our population's exploding. We know that. We all see it. There's pursuits out here every single day. We all see it. It's on social media every day. And acts of violence are just going up overall. And you talk to other cops that come in here, whether they're a sheriff, or they're a regular sheriff's deputy, or a police officer from one of the cities, they're all seeing it, every one of them. So my thing is, why not let's fix for regular civilians also, and also at the same time fix it for the peace officers.
Gotcha. Understood on that. And then the second piece that we're going to talk about today is enacting or proposing to enact a capital punishment for a child molester, right? Sex predator. Talk to me about this. Now, this is a tricky one for a lot of reasons, but talk to me first about what the idea is, what the intent is, and we'll go from there.
So last session we had House Bill 515. That was a death penalty for molesting a child under 12 years old. Texas has a law. Florida has a law. They're basically test cases. It's definitely going to be an appellate issue. Trying to take somebody's life when they haven't taken a life is kind of the concept of it. And we got it through the House. It went through the House last session. I believe it passed 57-11. And it was held up at committee in the Senate side. And the pushback on it was the costs of housing, the costs of the appellate issue, the appellate process, and the concerns of the obvious issue of, well, he or she didn't kill anybody. How is it that we're trying to give them the death penalty? And it would not be for everybody. There would have to be some specific aggravating factors that any normal person would look at and say, oh my God, we've got to do something different with this person. This person's clearly an animal to do this to a child. The Attorney General's office releases a report every year. I don't know if they've released 2024's, but you can pull it up online. From 2020 through 23, there was almost 3,000 child sex crimes arrests in our state. 3,000. We're not trying to kill 3,000 people. We're not trying to give that many people the death penalty.
Right.
But when you get cases of human trafficking where they're stealing a kid and molesting them or raping them, multiple victims, taking them across state lines, internal injuries, there's many factors that can go into it that would be probably pretty graphic to talk about in this setting here. But it would be for the worst of the worst. And We did have testimony at Senate. We had one of the members of our board who is a victim herself that testified to what being a victim is like. Many people testified there was a lot of support, but the main pushback was costs. It was all about money. And it's hard to put a price on little children. And we're not talking about a 17-year-old girl who's having a relationship with a 20-year-old, and it's not that. We're talking about a 6-year-old little girl being victimized by a 25, 35-year-old predator. And that's what this bill's made for.
Gosh, man, it's hard to imagine those people exist, but they do. One concern on this that I heard from somebody was, look, right now, actually, I've heard it from multiple people, that as the punishment, right, for a crime like this goes up, different things happen, right? Because you ratchet up the problem. Now, one was articulated that, hey, look, the majority of people that engage in this kind of abuse with young people are people that the kid knows. And that knowledge and that relationship are leveraged in preventing the kid from coming forward. So say it's a horrible uncle against like some 11-year-old girl who's like, you can't tell anybody this or else I'll go to jail forever. And this poor 11-year-old victim is now a victim not just of the act, but also has to carry it around with her and see the uncle at like Christmas and stuff. And the initial argument was, hey, if you increase the punishment for this and it goes from like, I'll go away to jail to I'll be killed, you're going to have a lower instance of reporting by the 11-year-old because now they have to overcome this mass guilt that it's like, I might as well have a gun to this kid's head or to the, adult's head. That was like a terrible consideration. I was like, gosh, that's rough. Another that came after that recently was, look, if you're a horrible predator and you've done something terrible and you know that you're going to go away to jail, you're going to take certain action to prevent getting caught, right? Including guilting or, further abuse to the victim. Okay. If you're a horrible person that's done something horrible and you know that if you get caught, you're not going away to jail, you're going to be killed, you will take different steps to prevent the victim from articulating the crime, including potentially just killing the kid. Both of those things gave me pause. And I was like, oh. Now, again, I'm not a law enforcement agent. I'm not an economist. Like, I don't know these things for sure. But, like, what do you think about those hesitations?
I think that everything is a legitimate concern. I think everything should be on the table to talk about. My wife worked sex crimes for kids for a long time prior to her retiring, and I would assist on those cases. And what you're bringing up is correct. There's a lot of molestation and rape through the family, like what you're bringing up as far as an uncle and a small child, or a grandpa and a small child, or even sometimes brother, sister. Right. There's all kinds of stuff, or even fathers. So that's always going to be an issue. Absolutely. Anybody that says different, they're not being honest about it. It's sad, but it's true. And there is a huge issue, obviously, when I'm bringing up stats. 2024 is not even counted yet, and we're probably going to be pushing 4,000 child sex crimes in Idaho, in this conservative state, just in the last 5 years. So I think that if I take a step back, the other thing that we have to do is not try to go down rabbit holes and try to manufacture stuff, because in any law, in any situation, there's a what if. It can be in anything. We're talking about arming schools. We're talking about the fentanyl bill. One of the big things I heard about fentanyl was that, what about the high school kid who drops a pill into a can of Coke, and now they're going to get charged with 12 ounces of fentanyl and go to prison for 10 years. Right. These crazy outside the box thinking sometimes, it's not that it could never happen, but the likelihood is that we rather take the chance and have this huge deterrence and hold some predator accountable. Predators don't change. The one thing I used to talk to my wife about all the time is that people that are attracted to little kids stay attracted to little kids. It's going to be in them. They're not going to get rehabilitated. They're not going to go to prison, get psychological counseling, and go back out and suddenly not be attracted to little kids. They're attracted to little kids the way we're attracted to our wives. So it's a very sick, twisted world. But for us to live in fear of, well, we don't want to hold these people accountable because what if, because we're pushing the envelope and want to hold them more accountable, they're now going to kill the kid, versus holding them accountable for what they're doing. We can't control what a suspect's going to do, what the predator is going to do. If they're going to kill a kid, if they're going to kill a woman, I mean, we see that with rape. Rapists, serial rapists, often they graduate to murder. It's not uncommon. Acts get more and more violent over time, and within the home, back to the uncle and the niece or the nephew or things like that, it is a very real thing. They may not want to testify against their aunt, their uncle, their grandpa, their dad. My wife used to deal with that, but she also had a lot of successful prosecutions with that. And it gets to a point where if we don't do something, what is the option? Doing nothing. And I think the deterrence thing is a huge factor. Now, would there suddenly be 3,000 people on death row in Idaho for child sex abuse? No, that's not realistic. It would be used for the most egregious of circumstances. And it would be the type of crimes that anybody would be looking at going, that guy deserves or that girl deserves to get what they get. And I think that if we're such a conservative state and we believe in protecting our children, we've got to lead out in this country and get in line with Texas and Florida and push the envelope. We're not hearing that in Texas and Florida.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. You know, we don't always have to be first on things, right? We were first on, Governor Little was first on saying, hey, look, I think it was the Defense of Women's Sports Act. He was like, listen, if you're a guy, you can't play in the sporting arena. Like, he was the first governor in the country. Okay, great. We don't have to be the first on this one, and we're not. So what have we seen in other states? Have you seen an increase in murder or a drop? Have they seen a drop? Has it been an effective deterrent? Have you had a drop in child molestation cases?
I don't know that there's even any barometer to measure that related to that penalty being offered. I don't know that there's a way to look at that.
Well, wouldn't you just look at like charged cases?
Well, even if you look at Idaho in the report from 2023 back to 2022, an Idaho Attorney General report, it went down like 10%. But even going down 10%, that's without a death penalty, and that's with the entire state, not just a certain geographical area of Idaho. And
yeah, but we all got off a lockdown.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right, like that was a really dark time.
That's hard because then kids can't report. They can't go to school. They can't report to their teacher, to the nurse, to whoever. Right. They're locked down. So cases probably did go up, but they're down 10% just in like over a year period. Any number of things could also be a factor in that. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's the same person out doing it. If it's family members that are doing it, I mean, we'd have to look at every single case to give a real legitimate answer for that breakdown of 10%.
Well, Rob, listen, thank you for coming in and articulating these. There are a lot of things going on in the state, especially around law enforcement, and I want to really try to bite off just a couple at a time so people can select what they want to understand. Is there anything about these two in particular that you want to add at this point? I
want to add on the attempt murder of a peace officer. We're naming the bill the Bolter-Stahl bill, and it's for Tobin Bolter from Ada County Sheriffs and for Mark Stahl from Boise PD. Mark was killed back in 1998, Tobin last year. Both of their families are involved with this bill. As far as they've supporting it, they're seeing what the bill is all about. They believe in honoring their spouses and their son-in-law in one case. And I just hope that we get a lot of support to push it through.
Awesome. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate you. Let's do it again.
Thank you.